Welcome back, students. Time for another informative tutorial on the topic of heart attack. Let's see, this is video 169, and it's the first of many on your options for preventing a heart attack. As I told you at the end of the last video, I'm going to give you every option in every category for preventing a heart attack. And today we'll start by discussing the first of 3 videos on dietary options. You know that my menopause education is not conducive to just jumping around all willy-nilly in any old order. I'm extremely careful about the order of these videos. So if you haven't watched the videos before this one, you really need to. This heart attack unit begins with video 160, and each video gives you the next piece of information you need to succeed in preventing a heart attack. You can find all of this information in my book, whether you have the first edition or the second edition. In both books, it's chapter 28, and today's material is under the section on diet as a management option for preventing heart attack. In video 167, I gave you the long list of risk factors that put you at high risk for heart attack. Here's that entire list again. What you'll find is that these videos on how to lower your risk for or prevent a heart attack focus on these very risk factors. I'll be giving you ways to lower each and every risk factor individually. So that's what prevention is all about. Today's video tutorial is about dietary options for preventing a heart attack with regard to fats. So I'll show you that list of risk factors again, and this time with the ones pertaining to dietary fats highlighted. Here you see 4 risk factors highlighted in red: high lousy LDL, low healthy HDL, total cholesterol to HDL ratio greater than 4, and high triglycerides. So let's delve into how you can reduce those 4 factors for a heart attack. I have a problem with the way most people deliver information on dietary options for preventing a heart attack. They tend to be very general and to just lump many things together. For instance, if I asked you what kind of diet you need to adopt to prevent a heart attack, I bet you'd answer with low fat, high fiber. You'd be correct, but what exactly does that mean? And how exactly do you go about achieving it? You see, most educators tell you a little bit and then leave you to your own devices to accomplish the intended goal. Most people fail because they don't know how to accomplish the goal. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to break everything down for you into its component parts so that you have specific dietary principles on how to prevent a heart attack. Now, earlier I said that this was the first of 3 tutorials on dietary options for preventing a heart attack. That's because I'm going to divide the material into 3 food groups that can affect your risk for heart attack. Today I'll discuss fat. Next week, I'll discuss fiber, and the week after that, I'll discuss sugar. For each, I will be very specific, and I'll even show you how to use the information on nutrition labels for each. Even if you're the low-fat queen, you should definitely watch this video. In fact, if you ever focus on low-fat anything, you are precisely the person who needs to watch this video the most. Okay, let's delve into fats. In video 163, I explained how we ended up targeting fats as the cause of heart attacks. You learn that they are not the only culprit, but somehow the link between the two has stuck. And as with most of the information you get these days, fats are only part of the problem, and only certain fats pose any problem at all. So let's use what you see on a nutrition label to address the different types of fats. Way back in video 118, I taught you how to read a nutrition label. If you recall, I color-coded the entire nutrition label and addressed each category individually. Here's the whole nutrition label I showed you then. The section in red is fats, and here it is enlarged. Total fat is the sum of 3 different kinds of fat. There's saturated fat, trans fat, and unsaturated fat. The first 2 are bad for you, and the last one is good for you. And that's the big key to preventing a heart attack. It's all about limiting or avoiding the bad fats and eating a lot of the good fats. So you should limit your intake of saturated fat and trans fat. And what you need to know in order to accomplish that is which foods contain each kind of fat. It's actually quite simple, although it's just not what most people want to hear. Saturated fats are animal fats, period. All meat and dairy products contain saturated fat. So the easy way to limit or omit saturated fat is to limit or omit meat and dairy. It's simple. If it has a face or a mother, then it's full of saturated fat. And saturated fat is what causes heart attacks. Typically, you'll find recommendations for the upper limit of saturated fat intake. Now, that's all fine and good, but the truth is, the closer to 0 saturated fat you can get, the better. You'll see recommendations to limit your saturated fat to less than 75 kilocalories per day. You'll see recommendations to eat fewer than 20 grams per day. Anytime you see parameters like this, understand that they are geared for what most people will do. They are not geared for what's best. They are not geared for the specific purpose of preventing a heart attack, and they certainly aren't geared specifically for you. So like it or not, the bottom line is this: the more you limit your saturated fat, the lower your risk for a heart attack. Next is trans fat. Now, one of the big problems for people who are trying to lower their risk of heart attack is that everybody talks about saturated fat instead of talking about trans fat. Trans fats are more responsible for causing heart attacks than saturated fats. Trans fats are solid fats. And it doesn't take much trans fat to put you right in the high-risk category for a heart attack. If you eat just 2 grams per day of trans fat, you'll be right smack dab in heart attack land. So this indication on a nutrition label is critical. But there are layers and layers of problems with that line item on a nutrition label. Back in video 118, I explained that the FDA allows the food industry to list 0 grams of trans fat when the food actually contains 0.5 grams of trans fat. So the food industry just decreases the serving size so that they can write 0 grams of trans fat on the nutrition label. And the recommended amount of trans fat in your diet is 0. So here you have a situation in which even if the nutrition label says there are 0 grams of trans fat, there may actually be 0.5 grams per serving. So the 2 grams of trans fat per day is considered excessive enough to cause an eventual heart attack. But the food industry is allowed to lie about the grams of trans fat and write 0 grams of trans fat when there may be as much as 0.5 grams of trans fat. In other words, even if you're trying to avoid trans fat entirely, you could easily consume well over 2 grams by using a product that says it contains 0 grams of trans fat. So here's the solution. Instead of looking at the nutrition label for trans fat, look at the ingredients. All of the following are trans fat. If you see any one of them, do not buy the product. All hydrogenated vegetable oils. All partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. Shortening. Palm oil. Palm kernel oil. Coconut oil. Fried foods, baked foods, margarine, vegetable shortenings, and junky snacks all contain trans fat. So the key message in terms of preventing a heart attack with regard to fat is avoid both saturated fats and trans fat. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have any fat, because there are a bunch of good fats. All unsaturated fat is good fat. And the simple way to stick with the unsaturated fats is to stick with plants. Plants have only unsaturated fat. And there are two types of unsaturated fat. There's monounsaturated and there's polyunsaturated. And you don't even have to worry about which is which. They're both good for you. Nuts, avocados, and olives all contain unsaturated fat. And if you want to use vegetable oils, the ones that consist of unsaturated fat are olive oil, soybean oil, flaxseed oil, corn oil, canola oil, peanut oil, safflower oil, and sunflower oil. If you're eating plant products, you know you're eating only unsaturated fat. It's that easy. Do you see why merely saying that you should eat a low-fat diet is inadequate? Most people hear that and then proceed to eat low-fat dairy products. That's like being an alcoholic who claims to have kicked the habit but still consumes beer every day. Dairy products come from animals. They're chock full of saturated fat. The term low-fat dairy product is an oxymoron. Okay, there's one other kind of fat, cholesterol. I taught you about cholesterol in video 162. You learned that your body makes most of your cholesterol. So the cholesterol you consume in your diet is nowhere near as important as the saturated and trans fat for preventing a heart attack. Unfortunately, you hear more about avoiding cholesterol than you do about avoiding saturated fats and trans fats. But the truth is that cholesterol is much less harmful than these other two kinds of fat. When it comes to nutrition labels, you should not eat more than 300 milligrams of cholesterol in an entire day. Foods that contain cholesterol include animal products. So all meat and all dairy products are high in cholesterol. Just as your body makes cholesterol, so do the bodies of all other animals. So you don't need their cholesterol. Your body makes enough already. Cholesterol doesn't exist in the world of plants. So once again, if you stick to a 100% plant-based diet, you avoid cholesterol as well as the bad fats. People tend to make this issue of the relationship between fats and heart attacks much more complicated than it is. In reality, they're distorting the issue altogether, and that's because it's really not about fat causing heart attacks at all. It's about animal products causing heart attacks, but people don't want to hear that. They love their meat and dairy. In video 110, I talked about something called transit time. Transit time is the time it takes food to get from your mouth to your toilet. And when it comes to determining which foods cause a heart attack, it's all about transit time. Foods that have a very long transit time and take a long time to travel through your body cause heart attacks. Foods that have a very short transit time and speed their way through your body do not cause heart attacks. And like it or not, all animal foods have a very slow transit time of about 5 days. 5 days to work their way through your 25 feet or 7.5 meters of intestines. They just slug their way through little by little, very, very slowly. It takes 5 days. Get the picture? That's the problem. And as they slug their way through your digestive tract, they release all those bad saturated and trans fats into your bloodstream. And these are the fats that go to your arteries and bury into your arterial walls. And there they form the roadblocks that block your arteries. Conversely, plant foods fly through your intestines in less than a day. They contain none of the bad fats, only the good fats. And the good fats are too big and fluffy to bury into your arterial wall. They cause none of the damage that the bad fats cause. You know, every time I discuss this topic, someone pipes up and says, well, what about fish? Fish is good for you. They contain the good fats. So let's address fish. Fish do contain some good fatty acids, and these fatty acids do have some beneficial effects on your heart. They can reduce your total cholesterol and triglyceride levels. But it's the fish oils that are good for you, not the fish flesh. So the big question you have to answer is whether or not the beneficial effects of the fish oils is worth the detrimental effects of the fish flesh. Oh, and let's not forget about the mercury content of fish, which you can't quantitate. The thing that nobody mentions is that oceans are the cesspools of humanity, and the fish live in the ocean. So fish are possibly the most contaminated animals of all. I always tell you that everything has both advantages and disadvantages. Fish are no different. You have to balance the benefits of fish against the risks of fish. And finally, let's talk about soy. Long ago, in videos 25 through 30, I taught you all about soy. You learned that it is a phytoestrogen. In other words, it is a plant source of estrogen. You'll see that it comes up as an option for managing many aspects of your menopause. In the case of preventing a heart attack, soy is very beneficial. There is an absolute inverse relationship between consumption of soy and heart attacks. In other words, the more soy you eat, the lower your risk for a heart attack. Soy lowers your total cholesterol, your lousy LDL, and your triglycerides. So soy is great for lowering the fats that cause a heart attack. And one of the things you see on the list of risk factors for a heart attack, but do not see on a nutrition label, is triglycerides. And even if a nutrition label did list triglycerides, it would not be useful for purposes of preventing a heart attack. And that's because triglycerides play a double role in increasing your risk for a heart attack. First role has to do with how much triglyceride content there is in a food before you eat it. And the second is what your body does with the food after you eat it. And here's the catch. A food does not have to contain any triglyceride at all for your body to turn it into a triglyceride. And that's because triglycerides function as energy stores. So when you eat a triglyceride, your body may burn it for energy right then and there. But your body also stores energy in the form of triglycerides. So when you eat a meal that is too large, or you eat a high-fat food, or you eat a bunch of junk food, or you eat something that's full of sugar, your body stores the excess as triglycerides. Think of your excess fat as triglycerides. It's stored for later use. And it's your body's way of protecting itself against starvation. So now you have a situation in which even non-fat foods can become fat in your body. And that's why there's more to preventing a heart attack than just eating low-fat foods. And that's also why I've divided the dietary options for preventing a heart attack into 3 separate videos. One on fat, one on fiber, and one on sugar. And if you watch all of them in order, you'll learn everything you need to know in order to succeed in using dietary measures to prevent a heart attack. Okay, there's only one item left. High homocysteine level. You've heard of homocysteine, right? If you've been watching my videos, you have. But most people haven't. Homocysteine is an amino acid that comes from animal protein. Don't you just hate how all these things just keep coming back to the things you don't want to hear? I'm sorry, but I would be more sorry if you had a heart attack because you didn't know about homocysteine. It's very simple. If you eat animal products, your homocysteine level is high. And a high homocysteine level is associated with a high risk of heart attack. A level over 15 micromoles per liter is considered high risk for a heart attack. So once again, this is a simple thing to prevent using the dietary option of omitting animal products in your diet. Isn't it shocking that this whole low-fat dietary option is all about only one thing, and that one thing is animal products? But you know, when the same thing keeps coming up again and again, it should tell you something. It should tell you that it's important and that it makes sense for many different reasons. Okay, now we live in a time when there are all sorts of fad diets for this and that. So let me tell you which diets are the best and which diets are the worst for preventing a heart attack with regard to fat. I'll tell you the worst ones first. The very worst kind of diet you can use for preventing a heart attack with regard to fat is any diet that involves consuming a lot of animal products. So this would include the Atkins diet and the keto diet. They fill you with all the fats that cause heart attacks. And the very best diet you can use to prevent a heart attack with regard to fat is any diet that limits or omits animal fat and animal products. So diets that promote fruit, veggies, and plants are the ones that will prevent a heart attack. These include the Ornish diet, the low glycemic index diet, and the South Beach diet. Alrighty, that does it for dietary options with regard to fats for preventing a heart attack. I try to keep it really simple so that you can draw on the information anywhere, anytime. And you know that fats are not the whole story when it comes to dietary options for preventing a heart attack. We've still got 2 other dietary categories. So next week, we'll address the role of fiber in preventing a heart attack. And the week after that, we'll tackle sugar. Don't hesitate to schedule a one-on-one consultation if you need one. All you have to do is go to menopausetailor.me. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in a week. Bye.